Good evening. Since we didn't have 830 sections today, I'm going to be making a short video that summarizes a number of the things that we talked about in the writing workshop. The intentionality of having this video is to make sure that the information that we furnished in quiz section for the 930 and the 1030 sections is also available for folks in the 830 section to review and to let us know if they have any questions about. In this video, I'm going to go through the first assignment. I'm going to go over what it is that we're asking with respect to citations and citation practices, namely Harvard style. And I'm also going to look at an example model essay that was written by actually one of the grad students in our department to talk about the structure of that essay and how it relates to the paper that you're being asked to write. So let's start with this page, Assignment 1, Central Thesis and Argument Summary. So the deadline for this is going to be on Friday. It's due Friday by midnight, so please be mindful to make sure that you have a good internet connection and also that everything is getting uploaded correctly. On this, we're asking you to not include your name or your student ID number. We want to grade these anonymously. The intentionality of grading anonymously is that we know that when folks grade and know who it is that they grade or are grading, that can have an impact on a student's grade depending on whether or not, say, the TA has an implicit bias against them or an implicit bias for them. For example, if somebody is very, very experienced and has taken lots of philosophy classes, it might be that the TA implicitly would have a higher expectation of them given that they've been in philosophy for a few years. And we don't want biases like that to impact the grade that somebody is being assigned and given based on the quality of the work that they are doing for this class, which is a 200 level course. On that note, also please be sure that when you're naming your PDF or your Word document, that you're not putting your name in the title of that document. It defeats the purpose of anonymity if I look at your file name and it tells me exactly who you are, and then you're no longer anonymous. We do take anonymity seriously in this class because of concerns about implicit bias, so please be sure to not give us any identificatory information. We're not asking for it, especially on these papers. Word count. The minimum word count is 250 words. Do note that this is going to include in-text citations. The maximum word count is 350 words. Folks should be able to fit in the entire paper that we're asking for within 350 words. That might mean that folks have to kind of workshop a bit on how to truncate certain conversations or how to summarize certain things in a shorter fashion than maybe they're used to, but that's something that we're going to continue to work on for the rest of the quarter. Just give it your best shot. You can do it. On that note, please don't be the person that tries to, let me put it this way. We've had students in the past insert a bunch of white text at the end of their paper in order to try to pad the paper, quote unquote. We will catch you. That's an integrity thing. Don't do it. You're probably going to need at least 250 words to do this paper. If you're not hitting 250 words, you're probably missing something important, or you could explain something in more detail for your reader. So what exactly are we asking you to do? Well, we're asking you to identify and summarize clearly and concisely the central thesis and supporting argument of Savulescu's, quote, procreative beneficence in chapter 6 of your textbook. And we want you to try to do this in your own words. You're going to be citing and referencing this piece, but we want you to try to explain it in a way that makes sense for, say, your roommate or for somebody in your family who's never read the piece before. We don't want a lot of block quotes. This isn't about whether or not you can quote to us what it is Savulescu is saying. It's a practice and a journey of being able to figure out how it is we can explain somebody else's ideas in a way that's going to be intelligible. So on the note of quotations, don't quote. You should be paraphrasing and putting things into your own words. And when you do that, you should be citing properly. On the notion of citations, we're going to be asking you to use Harvard-style citations. So let's take a quick look at these. This is a link that is available on Canvas, so you are also more than welcome and able to pull this up and use it when you're creating your own paper. So the basics are, it should be on a separate sheet at the end of the document. It should be organized alphabetically by author. In this case, you should only have really one author, but in future papers you might have more. Should be double spaced. On that note, I would strongly recommend that you double space your entire paper. It makes it a lot easier for TAs to give feedback and in some cases to read the paper when it's double spaced. And you should have the full reference for all in-text references. You're going to be using in-text citations here, but you're going to need a separate reference page at the end that gives us the entire information about the chapter, the publisher, and which book the chapter is in, the author, the year published, etc. So let's take a quick look at in-text citations. So for in-text citations, and I'm going to skip down to where we see the Mitchell and the parentheses, if you have the name of the author in the sentence already, then you don't have to include the name in the parentheses. You just put the year that the piece was published and what page number or page numbers it is that you're referencing or where you're getting that information from. If you have not explicitly said the author's name in that sentence, though, the author's name is going to go in the parentheses. We need to know which author are you referencing. In longer pieces, you will plausibly have multiple authors. That means that we're going to need to know explicitly which piece it is that you're pulling from or pointing to or want us to look at for more references later. So it goes author, comma, year, comma, page number. Or in this case, page numbers if it's multiple numbers. So that's going to be what your in-text citations look like, adapted for Savulescu. Going on to the separate page citations. We're going to be using a chapter in an edited book. So what you're going to have is you're going to have the name of the author who wrote the piece, Savulescu, the year the piece was published, the name of that chapter, and that's when you tell us after that information, what book is this in? In this case, it would be in, and then you put the name of the editor, ed dot means editor, the name of the book, the state in which it was published, the name of the publisher, and what page numbers we find that article on. All this information is important to include in order to make sure that somebody reading your paper would be able to go back and actually find this chapter if they wanted to read it on their own. Again, imagine that the person reading your paper has not read Savulescu at all. They're going to maybe want to be able to go back and see what Savulescu said or what other things got mentioned that you didn't have the space to summarize or to name. So make sure that you're using proper citation practices in this paper. If you don't, it also would count as plagiarism. If plagiarism is bad, please use proper citation practices. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hop over and take a look at a model for writing.